are black people 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with COVID-19? Is a vaccine the solution? Is it possible to strengthen your immunity to this virus through natural means? Are we really in the midst of a pandemic? All this and more addressed as gotkushTV presents how to boost your immune system in the COVID-19 era. For this exclusive live web event, gotkushTV have brought together an illustrious lineup of holistic health practitioners, including Stephen Sali of the Mariandina Foundation, Ikong of Eat to Live, Not to Die, Kensu Imhotep of the Naturally Holistic Wellness Group, and Leah Salmon, the Naturally You Coach, taking place Sunday, the 25th of June, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. GMT, broadcast live on gotkushTV. Tickets are half price until the 15th of June. Get your tickets now from gotkushtv.com. How to boost your immune system in the COVID-19 era. This is an event not to be missed.
This is the cipher, and these are lovely panelists. African versus Caribbean versus British.
I'll say from African, is that no, you're not?
Everyone's Africanness comes innately. I went to Jamaica earlier this year, and I know I'm not Jamaican. They don't look at me as Jamaican.
Yeah. I don't like people just wearing a dashiki and wearing stuff and just saying, yeah, I'm African now. That's very fake to me.
You protect people, want to claim Africa, like it's some superior, something. This being a semicircle, and you, the audience, completing the circle.
gotkushTV. After a stellar 2019, your #1 black conscious media platform is getting ready to go into overdrive for 2020. As we promised last year, we launched The Inside. We premiered the pilot for the Black Group Economic Show. We dropped 2 new seasons of Wordsmith, the #1 platform for artists with a message in the music. We've seen you out on the road, the Black Carpet Awards, the Reparations March, the Legacy Center of Excellence, and more. We brought you Dr. Mumbi, the legendary Bob Andy, Queen Diambi, Kemi Seba, Esther Stanford Hossein, Leo Mohammed, Brother Leader Badlaka, and more. And now, 2020 is set to see gotkushTV taking it to the next level. First up, look out for the official launch of the gotkushTV website, your official portal for all things GKTV, including new shows, news, views, and reviews, soon to be serving you with advertising opportunities and the launch of the GKTV African market. gotkushtv.com will also be a global hub for all things black, conscious, and empowering from all over the black world. Black achievers, black excellence, education, health, positive black imagery, entrepreneurs, black brands, and charity work. All this and more can be found here at gotkushtv.com. Then there's the new shows. Decipher, the dynamic discussion and debate show. Health is Wealth, practical tips for living in wellness. Kush Communiversity, home of Black Warrior Scholarship. And UK Fire Entertainment, bringing you a slew of music videos for your listening and viewing pleasure. Look out for more of The Insight, Wordsmith, and the full 3rd season of the Black Group Economic Show, all coming your way soon. As always, the GKTV film team is available for hire to cover your events and all filming needs. Visit us at gotkushtv.com for hire inquiries and more information. Stand by all black businesses through our website, social media, and show content. We have monumental advertising, sponsorship, and network opportunities catering especially for you. gotkushTV is about to take off. To join us for the ride, there's 4 things you can do. 1, subscribe to our channel. Hit that bell to make sure you don't miss a release. Join us on all social media and hit up gotkushtv.com to subscribe to our mailing list for exclusive opportunities in the near future. 2, like. Let us know you're feeling our content by hitting that ever so important button of approval. 3, comment. We want to hear your feedback on everything we're putting out. So make sure your presence is felt in the comment section. 4, share. Spread the word by hitting that share button and exposing your circle to the magnificence that is gotkushTV. We look forward to building with you throughout 2020 and servicing you with high quality black media production. gotkushTV. Beyond discussion, beyond debate, we put the power in black media.
Greetings, Hotep 10-9 Warrior Kings and Queens. This is Shakara representing on the one and only, oh my giddy giddy, Gotkush TV live on this, the 25th of June, coming out of London City. And you don't know we are in the building, most definitely. It's your #1 black conscious media platform, servicing you as we always do. And even though it's locked down, it don't mean say we pop down, Kings and Queens. We're not pop down wrong, yeah. It's Gotkush TV. And inside, in fact, you know what, right now, you know, I'm not even sure whether it's lockdown, because I did hear Sir Boris did release the lockdown thing, but it's lockdown, but it's not quite lockdown. It's got to work, but don't go to work. Go see your family, but don't go see your family. So we don't know why I go on, Kings and Queens. Wherever it is, gotkushTV is here, live and in session with Quarantine Convos as we stay connected with the black world. We are not social distancing. We are socially connecting across the African diaspora right here on gotkushTV. And today is going to be an extra special one, but I'm going to get to that in a sec. Just want to remind you to like the video as you come through. Like the video as you come through, Kings and Queens. Hit that like button. If you are not subscribed to gotkushTV, subscribe to gotkushTV. And whilst you are here, check out our website, gotkushtv.com, and subscribe to our mailing list to get all the exclusives on our events, our new show content. You know what I'm saying? How you can support and join the gotkushTV extended family. And right about now, I want to let you know, tongue tied there, about a beautiful event that we have coming up on this Saturday, Kings and Queens. Yes, indeed. This Saturday coming, we are supporting Black Pound Day, family. Black Pound Day, as initiated by the one and only Swiss from the legendary Soul Solid crew. Yes, indeed, it's all going down. And in support of Black Pound Day, the gotkushTV will be running our Black Group Economics business show all day, Kings and Queens. Live the whole day. We're going to be here with Sister Ari, Brother Nat Nice, Sister Stella B, and myself, yours truly, Shakara, breaking down, speaking to experts in Black Group Economics, in cooperative economics, in business, entrepreneurs, and also let's profiling community, people in our community around the world that are in business and how we can support them, Kings and Queens. Yes, indeed, it's a small thing, but it goes a long way. And this is just, you know, a live edition of one of our flagship shows that is in development. And you can watch the pilot episode for the Black Group Economics show right now. Just check through the videos or check the playlist and you'll see Black Group Economics. And it's all there, Kings and Queens. So do join us this Saturday from 12 p.m. all the way to 5 p.m. We'll be here, right here, live on gotkushTV. You know what I mean? It's going to be a dynamic day, Kings and Queens. You do want to join us. You do want to join us. And you have also seen the advert for how to boost your immune system in the COVID-19 era, taking place on Sunday, the 28th of June from 5 p.m. Kings and Queens. Do join us with our health and nutrition experts, you know, showing us and keep teaching us how to stay in tune and exposing some of the information that we may not be paying attention to in relation to the medical establishments and the governments of this era, Kings and Queens. And last and finally, last but by no means least, we are releasing a new show. Yes, indeed, Kings and Queens, the first episode of a new show entitled Decipher, home of controversial conscious conversation, right here on gotkushTV, coming this coming Monday, the 29th of June, Kings and Queens. And there's so much dates here, you forget what I go on. 29th of June at 7 p.m. Kings and Queens, right here on gotkushTV. Decipher will be launching. More on that later on. But today is Quarantine Convos, and we have a very, very special guest, Kings and Queens. Yes, indeed, we have a very, very special guest. It is a pleasure for me to be hosting this particular guest right here on gotkushTV this evening. Little as it's known, and it's growing, there is a strong and powerful Pan-African YouTube community in development, Kings and Queens. And I can safely say that our guest tonight is one of the pioneers of this newly growing Pan-African community on YouTube, Kings and Queens. She goes by the name of Tierney Sheree, aka Afrikan Esquire of Afrikan Esquire TV. Greetings, Sister Tierny.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing?
Bless, bless, bless. We are good. And I want to make sure that everybody can hear you. So kings and queens, everybody in the building right about now, bigging up the Western Goddess, bigging up Freddie, Minta. Shout out to Shady, Rayleigh, or Raddy. I don't know how you pronounce that name there, but it's own, you know, it like it rhymes, so it's all good. You know what I'm saying? Miss Emilia, the regulars in the building, Black Estate, bigging up yourself, Planter Johnson, Okingo Gold, and all these things. Just let us know if you can hear our sister Tierny loud and clear. We want to make sure that the powerful voice of our sister is coming through the airways loud and strong. My sister, I'm very aware that as much as you have you know, a significantly dedicated audience on YouTube, some of our audience may not be familiar with Tierney Sheree. So let's give our viewers a little bit of a, you know, an introduction to who you are, where you come from, you know, how did you get into this thing called activism and Pan-Africanism and all these things?
All right, so again, my name's Tierney Sheree. Essentially, I just started on YouTube probably about 5 years ago. I really saw that there was a void as far as people who were talking liberation. And the people who I did see talking liberation, Pan-Africanist liberation, it was very surface, the analysis. And so I felt like I wanted to start a channel where I could get in depth and give an unapologetic view of what the problems were. And so that's what I did. And so my channel is Afrikan Esquire TV. And I try to post a couple of videos a week, just giving some analysis. But you know, outside of YouTube, I have an organization that I started with a number of people. We charge Colonialism. That organization is based in the US, and the purpose is to raise the consciousness of the fact that our people are being colonized in the United States. We usually don't think of that condition of colonialism, but it's really the same whenever you do a comparative analysis of what's happening all over the world in the African diaspora and on the continent. So that's one tool that we use for activism. I'm also an attorney. I'm a mother. If you've seen my channel, you've probably seen my son a lot. So, you know, that's kind of what keeps me occupied at this moment.
All right. Well, by the way, we got to translate, you know, Sister Tierney, because in the UK,
okay.
No, I'm being a little bit facetious, but when she says that she's an attorney, I mean she's a lawyer, kings and queens. That's what that means. You know what I mean? But yes, yeah. for just as a little bit of a personal thing, I just want to put this out there. Sister Tierney. Well, first of all, like, was you born into Pan-African consciousness, or did you come into it at a later date?
No, not at all.
All right, cool.
I laugh because at one point, like coming up as a child and everything, I was actually identified myself as a conservative. So I was, you know, completely, like, I guess, disavowed any African identity. And it really wasn't until
wait, 1 second, sis. Are you saying that you was once Candace Owens? Is that what you're saying to me right now?
I wouldn't say that far. But I would say that at one time I probably would have looked up to her. I'll say that.
Okay.
But that was, you know, when I was more of a kid. But I think, you know, as I got older, particularly hitting the teenage years and kind of came to experience things like discrimination or observe it, it kind of became undeniable that these, you know, American dreams that are sold to us, that they're actually fallacious. So I just started questioning and started doing reading. And eventually, you know, probably, you know, right when I was about to enter college, I just was a completely different person. My friends laugh at me because one time, you know, I was this, you know, person that was for, you know, like a person that would like a Candace Owens, and then the next moment I chopped my hair off, chopped my perm off, and was talking about African liberation. And so you know, it was a good transition though, because I think it's good in that I can understand different point of views, and hopefully those people who are not aware of themselves, not aware of the identity, I can help to bridge and make some of those connections.
Yes, yes. If I may probe slightly into one more personal anecdote of your life, because I agree with you when you say that that a lot of the what passes for Pan-Africanism in the YouTube space is often very surface level. So our brothers and sisters are not often used to engage in deeper levels of political analysis from a Pan-African perspective, but especially not coming from professed Christians, I must say this, right? It's a very unusual for certain levels of Pan-African analysis to be coming from brothers and sisters who proclaim the Christian religion as you do. And you said this publicly, so I'm not putting you out there.
No, you're not.
Is that a correct analysis? And how does a professed Christian come to this level of politicization within organization and them kind of things there.
Yeah, you're correct. And I think it goes back to when I said, you know, I was a conservative, had a conservative viewpoints growing up. That was because of the faith or the church that I was raised in. I felt like, you know, if you're a Christian, this is how you identify things. I think that for me, as I started to unravel what being a Christian meant, I started realizing that there is a indoctrination of African people, and it's something very serious. I think it's something that we really have to deal with as far as how Christianity has been used by the West. But really, when you study, you know, the Bible, Jesus, as people call him, his real name was Yeshua. He was not a European. He was someone of African descent, you know. There's a number of his ancestors that were listed in the Bible as being of African descent. And so, you know, not just that, but also understanding the heart of the message is not one of capitalism. It's not one of selfishness. A number of times in the Bible, you know, you'll hear the condemnation of a lot of these things that are paraded by the West and paraded by capitalism. So for me, I guess it kind of went hand in hand. You know, as I started questioning society, I also started questioning my religion. And I remember questioning the culture of my religion, I'd say. And I remember kind of coming into a conflict where I had to kind of just disengage from the church that I originated in and have a more understanding of the Bible, the word, as being something that is not okay with discrimination, is not okay with oppression. So yeah, I would say it's kind of like a dual consciousness that I had to go through, not just, you know, as far as politics and social issues, but also as far as understanding the theology and the true theology, and the fact that we do have a serious problem with how Christianity has been used in the world. But that's something that I think I can help also, in that I'm completely willing to condemn, you know, these ideologies that have come out of the faith. And so, yeah.
All right, give thanks, Kings and Queens. Well, you got a little brief profile insight into who Sister Tierney Sheree is right there. If you want to know more, you better subscribe to Afrikan Esquire, Afrikan Esquire TV. But more importantly, check out AfrikanEsquireTV.com. It is .com, right?
I would say that site's not too active right now.
All right, okay.
So yeah, you can more so go on my YouTube.
Well, stay tuned, Kings and Queens, for the site to become more active again, so you can stay in tune with everything. I don't say this to flatter the sister, but in terms of everyday Pan-African analysis on everyday issues, there are very few people that are doing it as consistently and as well as Sister Tierney. So do check it out, Kings and Queens, if you want that regular Pan-African analysis on everyday issues, and not just in the USA, but around the Black world. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So we got that. Sister, we see that we've got a fan of your channel here. Now, initially, I thought this was a compliment to myself, but I realized she's talking about your son. You know what I'm saying? So we got the cute African boy children out there in the world. Western Goddess, big up yourself. I thought you was complimenting me for a second, you know.
Yeah, thank you.
But, you know, say it, go. All right, Kings and Queens, let's get into this thing now. So in relation to the now, so obviously things have been developing very, very fast, yeah, over the last few months, yes. And we started just with a virus, yeah, that we heard was Corona, and then we found out that we was in the 19th iteration of the Corona. So we got COVID-19 and these things, and then there was lockdown and all these things, and then now we're in the midst of a situation of a number of killings of Black men and women in police custody, yeah, and all of this is kind of wrapping up together. So I just want to start by getting your initial thoughts on how we are situated as a Black world right now, Black people in the United States of America, in New Jersey, and around the world, in relation to the COVID, and then in relation to the deaths in custody. General reflection.
Well, as far as COVID in the United States, we've seen it kind of unraveled a lot of things that were already there. You know, a lot of people have been talking about the fact that Africans in America, we've always faced disproportionate health coverage. We've also always had issues as far as diet and just having access to the things that would give you the body to be able to withstand something like this. And so it was no surprise to me that when COVID-19 started sweeping the US, we just kept hearing many stories that our people were the ones who were dying at the highest rate or having the most exposure. I remember when I was close to before my job, basically sent us home for the to quarantine. I remember the last days, like there were no white people around, like when I was walking around downtown, you know, but I seen all of our people. And so it's like, you know, whenever things happen, they abandon, you know, these cities where they get jobs and everything, they abandon them, but we're still there. We're still concentrated, heavily concentrated, and we're still being exposed. And so that's what you've seen happen. You've seen mass rates of COVID-19 in the US, of a lot of deaths. And, you know, again, this is just a revelation that a lot of people seen coming, because all of us understood that our health has always been disproportionate to white America. Interestingly enough, though, I think as far as the total African diaspora, that there has been definitely some positive things that come out of it. And particularly, I'll say on the continent, I was very surprised just because of how the news was projecting that Africa was basically going to get decimated by COVID-19, and it like did nothing compared to what they said. And so, you know, I remember like, all right, well, you know, let's, you know, my husband's Ghanaian. So we're like, all right, let's, you know, keep our relatives in prayer and blah, 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 and pay attention to what's going on. And then we hear from them like a week or two later, and they're like, no, we're fine. And so I honestly think that is a really good opportunity for Africans. I actually just posted a video on that recently, that we have such an open opportunity right now. As far as number one, we were not dealt the worst hand as far as COVID-19. Number two, what we're going to see is a lot of these Western countries that have had their economies decimated. They're no longer going to be so quick to give aid to African countries. And we should know that this aid that is given is always conditional, and more than likely it's there to put the people into extreme debt. And that debt, whereas the leaders, you know, they get to live nice, rich lives off of these deals that they make with foreign countries. The people are the ones who have to bear the burden of that, those high, you know, crazy amounts of debt. Mm-hmm. So we're going to see, I think, a real decrease of international aid being given to Africa. And to me, that's a good opportunity, because if anything, Africa needs to look internally and stop looking to the West or to China. It just makes no sense to me. Certain things like mass imports, you know, whenever you have things like so readily available in your country, but no one's just putting the energy into making it available to their own population. Yeah. So it's kind of like, you know, I think there's going to be a real opportunity for us to rely on ourselves and not to look to the West to rescue, I guess, or the idea that they're rescuing us, although we know, in fact, that they're actually crippling us more. As far as the police brutality thing, I think that the COVID had a lot to do with, at least in the United States, had a lot to do with the reaction. As far as you had a lot of people who were in the house, you know, for a long time. And then all of a sudden, you know, everyone has a reason to go out and they feel like they have a purpose again. And I think that's what happened. Because George Floyd, you know, I think the matter of death was definitely maybe more than what we're used to, as far as, you know, actually watching someone die a slow death. Mm-hmm. But this has happened, you know, so many times before. And so the question is, well, why now? And I think a lot of that was like pent up frustration. I also think, you know, would this happen if Obama was still president? I personally think probably not. So, you know, I think that it's a lot of other frustrations that are going on, and created a wide backlash, you know, against the system. But I noticed that the backlash is kind of dwindling right now. And I think that it's probably because, again, the issue was more so the system for a lot of people. And they weren't necessarily champions of things like police brutality for Black people. Right. I don't know. Did I answer all your questions?
Yeah. For that one, that's fine. That's fine. The reflection. As a rider to that, then, like getting straight to the heart of the matter, Black Lives Matter is the #1 hashtag and slogan of the moment at the minute. And then associated with that, you have terms like white privilege, and microaggressions, inequalities, and these kinds of things. Whereas you place this issue firmly within the context of colonialism, yes, mm-hmm. and colonization. And this is an idea that Malcolm X articulated extremely well in the last year of his life. But just explain to our listeners, our viewers, why this is not necessarily an issue of just inequality or microaggressions or the racial wealth gap, or you know what I'm saying, or white privilege, but it's colonialism. Why is it colonialism as far as black people in America?
Well, when you look at colonialism, you know, we think of the context of like Africa, for example. The idea was you had a population that were there for the purpose of exploitation, and they were there to basically abstract resources from them for the benefit of an outsider, you know. In the case of the United States, you know, we were taken from Africa and put there, but the same condition actually exists. You know, we're present in the country. However, we exist more so to uphold the system of white supremacy and uphold the economic system, uphold just so many different facets of the American economy that rely on us to be the source of labor, to be the source of exploitation. That's really what colonialism is. So when you look at something like police brutality, you know, to me, number one, every single time that you see a country that has a big problem with police brutality, one, I noticed that all of them have a really big underclass of a certain group. Mm-hmm. And their repression against that group gets reflected in a police presence that is very much oppressing the people. So I look at Brazil, for example. You see the same thing. The repression of Black people in Brazil has resulted in a situation where you have mass police killings of Black people there. So I don't look at police brutality as an isolated thing. I look at it as a symptom. You know, I'll do videos on police brutality because I think Black death is something that always needs attention drawn to it. However, do I think that addressing these individual instances is going to attack the overall system? I don't, because to me, the police are there for a reason. They're there to protect the society that exists. They're there to, in particular, protect property interests. If there was no concern for these Black people taking from the white people things that they have looted from the world, if there was no concern for that, you would not need a police presence. So to me, you know, when you see protests about a death, instead of the overall system that benefits from people being in that position over us, when I see, you know, people who don't want to face what colonialism has done to us, but they want to face one instance and think that that's going to solve the whole problem, to me, it's just not reasonable. There's a reason why this has been happening since we've been here, since we've been in America. It's just a reason. And because the same system that existed back then was never undone, it's only evolved. That's what colonialism does. It doesn't go away willingly. It evolves into something where it can still accomplish its purpose, although it might be abstract or it might be harder to point the finger at, but it's still very much intact. So, you know, that's what, you know, I try to push on my channel, that, you know, we have to recognize that these are not things that we can solve by getting angry after the fact, after someone has died. You have to be angry at the system consistently, because the system that killed George Floyd, that's the same system that incarcerates Black people at the highest rate of anyone in the country and in the world, really. That's the same system. So your energy towards the effect versus your energy towards the cause is going to be misplaced.
Right. Your answer puts me in the mind of Baba Kwame Ture when he says that we as revolutionaries are not concerned with issues, we're concerned with the system. Right. Absolutely. And now that I've called his name, I'm going to ask you the question that I've been asking a few people. Are you Black Power or are you Black Lives Matter? And if so,
I'm Black Power all the way. I mean, honestly, I think Black Lives Matter. It can serve a purpose, but it's very surface level. Like, what exactly are we saying? Are we saying that we want a total, recognition that Black people their lives should be honored? Or are we saying that we want Black people to start taking control of their destinies? Those are two very different things. You know, it's very different for me to say, okay, just don't shoot me or whatnot, versus I want control over the politics of my neighborhood. I want control over the education system. You know, those are very two different things. And I think that the reason why, I don't know if it's the same over in the UK, but certainly in the US, you know, every single major corporation just jumped on Black Lives Matter. They can do that, and they would never do that with Black Power, obviously, but they can do that because the message is not a threat to their interests. It's not a threat to them continuing to some of them pillage our communities. It's just not a threat. And so we have to question, to me, that should be the ultimate question. Why was it so easy for so many companies like, Facebook or Amazon? Like, how is it so easy for them to put, we honor Black Lives Matter on our website, despite the fact that we know that these companies have very sketchy policies that affect our people? That should be the question.
Yes. We had Lord Jamar on Tuesday, and we asked him, what would he suggest be done from here on out? And he mentioned the issue of boycotts, but not just like we're going to boycott for a day, but he's talking, proper like Montgomery bus boycott over a year, like for life. You know what I'm saying? So my question coming out of that for you is, well, I guess you kind of answered this. It would seem that a lot of these companies coming out in support of Black Lives Matter is partly a strategy to fend off any coming boycotts down the road. You know what I'm saying? But do you see boycotting as a viable strategy? Because there's a lot of talk about that right about now.
Not anymore, so honestly. I don't see it anymore, because to me, like, what's the point? Am I boycotting you until when? For how long? My honest opinion is that we have to look outside of the system. And to me, boycotting is a way to try to get in the system. It's just a way to try to get the system to feel the pain of not recognizing you, in hopes that at some point they will do things right by you. To me, you have to just completely back up from the system and look for alternative means, look for alternative ways, because, think about the Montgomery boycott. Yeah, they were able to get the buses to stop making them sit on the back of the bus. But guess what? The people, still have no control over those bus companies, and the bus companies still are in a position of power long after that. We could have, I've heard a lot of people say this, we could have, while we were boycotting, created our own bus lane. What would that have done? Putting our people in power, putting our people in a position where we could actually affect real change. I just think boycott, it's a passive act. It's on the list of passive acts. Is it more extreme? Maybe, but I don't think it's something that will bring about meaningful revolution.
Right. Now, sis, you got a video on Afrikan Esquire TV where it's entitled "When Black Liberation Becomes a Trend." Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of that right now. Everybody's bringing that over in the UK at the moment. In the last 2 weeks, every Black celebrity that's had any notoriety in like the last decade, maybe even 20 years, has come out with a story about how to experience racism in whatever field of, what I'm saying, that they've been in. And I don't want to sound like I'm mocking, because everybody's entitled to tell their story. But it's been very interesting to me how, just like the companies have embraced the Black Lives Matter narrative, the whole entire media has rallied around these stories and given all of these people platforms to come on. You've got these concerned white presenters sitting there saying, how did you feel when so this happened to you and that happened to you? So let's break down this idea of when Black liberation becomes a trend, and whether this is something positive or negative in terms of our own self-interest.
To me, we have to keep in mind these things have happened before. There's been times where we rocked the system, and the system responded by giving us some type of concessions, and the purpose of that ultimately was to pacify us. And I think that's the same thing that's happening as far as Black Lives Matter. You see a lot of people on board. Some of them, some of them might, I believe have good intentions. They really think that, going out and saying I support, this, that, and the third, is going to have some type of positive effect in the community. And I can't knock you for feeling that way, right? But others of them, I think, are trying to find a way to continue business as usual. And because of that, now we have a system or a situation right now where it's okay, to voice your opposition to racism. Why wasn't it okay a month ago? I don't know. Why wasn't it okay for Hollywood actors to tell the truth, before? What changed, and what changed, I think, was that the system seen that there was a threat in continuing to silence, the type of dialogue. And so, as always, whenever the system has a threat, that is against it, it can make concessions. It can find a way to allow certain things, you know, in a certain time and place, as long as it doesn't threaten the continuance of the system's purpose. Right. And that's what you see, I think. It's a trend in that, you know, so many people I've never heard say Black Lives Matter, and all of a sudden, you know, everyone wants to be over accommodating. Everyone wants to talk about Juneteenth, you know, and making that a national holiday, which is crazy, you know, to me, because you know that just a few weeks ago, none of them knew what it was.
I've never seen so much promotion for Juneteenth in my life. I've never seen it. Sorry, but go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted.
And the sad thing about this is that a lot of the people who, I'll say the people who are white, who are doing these types of things, they'll feel like they're in the right, because a lot of Black people crave white affirmation. They crave white attention. They crave it whenever they say, oh, we're going to celebrate your holiday, or we're going to wear Black Lives Matter. So because of that, they'll feel rewarded and feel that, you know, they're actually doing something right. But yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, we have to keep in mind, like I said, we're dealing with a system, and unless you want to talk about undoing that system and what the implications of that are, you know, it's very easy to say Black Lives Matter, but it's another thing to say that white supremacy should not have any control over Black people, and that Black people should have control over themselves. It's just a very different thing. And so, you know, I don't know if you caught this, but on Twitter, the one sister, no name, I mean, she was talking about capitalism being the root, or you know, going hand in hand with racism. And it's so funny, all those people, a lot of people on her timeline, I noticed too, before we're saying, you know, yeah, Black Lives Matter, they kind of like, what do you mean capitalism? Like, how is that the case? So that's how you know that it's very surface level. Like they're okay with saying Black Lives Matter, but don't come against their interests and don't come against their system. So I respect white people who are like, you know, anything's on the table as long as we can change the conditions that we're living. Those who have well, we can do it up until here, those are the ones that, you know, they're not truly sincere, and they're not really for African liberation, for the totality of what it means.
Yes. Sis, we're gonna get to the We Charge Colonialism action plan in a second. Yeah, I do want to say though, kings and queens, that I want you to take advantage of this opportunity. I kid you not, we have one of the most powerful Pan-African minds on the planet right now, on quarantine convos, and so we are gonna give you the opportunity to interact with our sister Tierny in a little while. So feel free to come through when we share the link, you know, make a comment, ask your questions, and you know, just pick the brain of our sister. So do take the opportunity whilst our sister is here. I do want to ask you about this issue of self-defense, sis. And because I know you've spoken about that recently, and there's a lot of fear around this at the moment, but it doesn't appear that much of our activism, the popular face of our activism at the moment, is talking about self-defense. In a country whereby you have the right to bear arms and protect yourself, like, why isn't there a stronger narrative around the need for the African community to organize and defend itself, not just against the police, but we're hearing about hangings taking place and the rise of the right wing. What is taking place, and what do we need to do to develop that narrative even further?
Well, number one, I think, although a lot of our people don't want to admit it, a lot of them are scared. They look at things like what happened to the Black Panthers. You know, a lot of them got wiped out, or different, the Black liberation movements. Like, you see, whenever self-defense was the narrative, and a lot of those people, unfortunately, are not here to tell the story, or they're incarcerated for life. A lot of people don't want to threaten a dominant society. Even people who, you know, maybe they'll go out and privately, you know, get a license to carry, but they don't want to make a pronouncement. I remember a couple of years ago, there was when this label came out, I think it was the FBI, they said we're targeting Black identity extremists. And one of the first people who they targeted was a brother who he started just a self-defense group. It was, you know, not go out and hurt anyone. Just this is how you practice self-defense. And, you know, they were armed and whatnot, but everything was legal. But they got him, they held him in prison for, I think, something like a year or something crazy. And we see when things like that happen, and we know that although they say there's a right to bear arms, there's really not a right to bear arms that's recognized by white people for Black people. In fact, a lot of the rhetoric behind a right to bear arms, you realize, is the idea that one day the oppressed people are going to rise up, and we have to be able to fend for ourselves and protect our property. That's the real intention behind it. So, you know, it's funny. I did a video. I was talking about Charlemagne. He did an interview with, I think, someone on MSNBC. Charlemagne the God, and he, you know, said, you know, as far as Ahmaud Arbery, the brother who was killed while jogging, you know, just running, and killed by, I think, 3 white supremacists. He said, I don't believe there's anything that can be done in the system. I just think that we have to protect ourselves. And when he said protect ourselves, the white woman who was interviewing her says, well, we shouldn't encourage people going out and, you know, having, you know, doing violence in the community. He said nothing about violence. So how did she hear from protect ourselves that we want to go out and start, you know, committing acts of violence inside of the community? So that tells you, as Malcolm X would say, it's the white guilt complex. Like anytime that we're talking about doing for ourselves and separating, anytime we're talking about taking up arms and protecting ourselves, they think that automatically that means that we're going to come after them for everything they've done to us, because we know with Europeans, whenever you do anything to them, that's their response. So ultimately, I just think it's fair, honestly, in the Black community to actually take that type of stance.
I remember in the wake of the killing of Trayvon Martin, I had cause to do some research into gun laws in the USA and the disparity between Black gun ownership and white gun ownership. And it's mad. Whereas the whole country has the right to bear arms, they still found a way to disenfranchise the African community of being armed while enfranchising the European. I don't know if you've ever studied that. Right, yeah, it's mad. It's not, the information is not fresh on my mind at the moment, so I'm not going to go into it. But it is that you can see that it's been deliberate. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
In terms of how, you know, the gun laws are instituted. You know?
Yeah, and think about Philando Castile. You know, he was legally licensed to carry. I mean, to me, that was like a big warning, you know, to a lot of people. You know, even though we say, you know, you have a right to bear arms, you really don't. And if we catch you, you know, in a position where you can defend yourselves, that might just cost you your life, even if you really weren't posing a threat. You know, so I think there's a lot of messaging going on behind that.
So as we take this issue and propel it into the international arena, you have, in terms of promoting we charge colonialism, you've promoted the idea of Pan-African operational unity quite significantly as a part of the solution to issues like these. Why does it matter the extent to which Africans on the continent or in the Caribbean or in the UK are you know, in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in the United States in relation to these issues?
Well, honestly, a lot of the ideas and philosophies, and again, it's a group of people, you know, we talk about what we think will ultimately have the biggest effect. A lot of it was driven towards not so much just having a movement in the US, but really kind of inspiring Africans everywhere who face the same thing. So particularly, you know, when we first started, we were pushing the idea of going to the United Nations and filing a petition in the United Nations for recognition that we as a people are being colonized. The idea being that every single African person in the world is being colonized. So having that type of action from Africans in the US, identifying common issues that we all face, would be a means of solidarity. And so that's really the idea that, number one, to be clear, we're not of the position that the United States is going to willingly stop oppressing Black people. But we are of the position that if Black people who stay in the United States have solidarity with the Pan-African world, that we have some type of backing, because right now we have none. I mean, you consider all the things that have happened in the United States and the fact that after, you know, the biggest threat that has been posed is riots, you know, which although, you know, although I think of a revolutionary nature, it's not organized to actually bring about actual change. And so when you look at the international world, you know, that to me would be the best means of having some type of protection, you know, having, you know, the US think twice, or different entities, states, companies, police departments think twice about us as a people. Right now, we're very disposable because, as you see, whenever you kill one of us, there's really no consequence down the road.
You know, sis, I know somebody listening right now is saying, yeah, but that sounds all good, but it's all fantasy. It's all airy-fairy. Africa is not even united with itself. There is no flat black entity that we can call on. That the black people in the Caribbean have got different issues to the black people in America, and the black people in America are a completely unique, distinct set of people from everybody else in the black diaspora, and they just need to focus on their own thing. So what do you say to that? You're on the fantasy, sis?
I say that there's people who haven't studied history, and you know, to me, you just have to. When I looked at, for example, the ADOS or FBA like arguments, like you can tell to people who have not studied what has happened historically. When the U.S. has faced the biggest threat to where it actually did certain things, for example, Brown versus the Board of Education, the integration of schools, like or the Civil Rights Act, it's always been from not just domestic pressure, but international pressure. Because factually, we're only about 13% of the population here. They can easily deal with us. They can easily, especially when the fact that we are so divided, they can easily, you know, give some people some, you know, some privileges, and that's where you have like a sellout class. They can easily, you know, keep these other guys, you know, put them all in prison, and then, you know, this small group, you know, all we have to do is, you know, do some type of program to where we'll slowly wipe them out. Like it's so easy to divide us and to have us done away with easily whenever it's just us. But whenever it's the international world, that's where you see a different story. I always talk about the fact that Haiti, people have to keep in mind when Haiti was liberated, they were liberated by themselves, you know, literally by themselves. You know, Africa wasn't, you know, there yet as far as uniting with us all over the world. Our people in the US, we were enslaved. Other Caribbean islands were enslaved. I say that to say that if we got our liberation in America just ourselves, and we stood by ourselves, we would just be another Haiti. And that it's easy to deal with us. With Haiti, all they had to do was put some sanctions and say you have to pay this large debt, and then you know have the IMF and all these things. Like it was easy to deal with one. Now, imagine had a different situation happen, that there were not just Haiti, but Jamaica was free, and the blacks in Latin America were free, and just different pockets of us saying the same thing, that we are all one people, and that if you do one thing to one of us, you're going to do something to all of us. Just imagine the different history that we would have had of Haiti. So for the last point, you know, as far as, you know, Africa being it's Africa's still colonized, you know. There's, I mean, to people, I think they look at the image of, you know, Africa being independent, you know, saying, oh, well, they have a black president, they have a, you know, black parliament, whatever. So, you know, they're independent, they're free. No, they're still colonized. You know, neocolonialism, as Kwame Nkrumah said, is worse than colonialism, because you can do it without even having to account to the people what you're doing. You can literally have the same economic policies where you're taking the resources of the people, where you're putting them aside of a situation where they're in dire poverty. But this time they can't say, oh, it's the British government's fault, or, oh, it's the French government's fault. They can't even say that. They have to look at their own government and think that there's something inherently defective about them. So we have to understand that, yes, Africa is still colonized, just like we're colonized. So to me, when I hear Black people point the finger at African countries and say, well, you know, they don't have their stuff together. Well, we don't have our stuff together. So that means that we're having a common issue going on. So why not figure out, why is it that every single place in the world where you go, where there are Black people, why is it that every single place we're all facing the same issue? The smart thing to do would not be to say, well, at least we're not like you over there, or at least we're not like you over here. The smart thing to do would be to come together and say something's going on, that all of us are facing the same hell every single place in different places around the world.
But sis, they sold us into slavery.
And I was just talking to, it's funny, I was just talking to my mother about this, you know, because she's seeing something on Facebook saying that, and she was asking me about it. And like I told her, number one, I think we all understand that, yes, those who sold people of African descent into slavery to the United States or the Caribbean, they were wrong. Did they completely understand what they were doing? I think a lot of the factors say no, because number one, we know that the slavery that has existed in Africa and has existed all over the world was not the slavery that was practiced by the West. You know, it was a lot of times slavery would be something like you might have someone who commits a crime, and rather than put them in jail, you make them the household person, and this person still has their rights. You know, this person can work a certain amount of years and be freed, but they do have to work for this family. Again, not an institution that I support necessarily, but I understand it's very different from what happened in the US. Mm-hmm. So there's that part of it. But the other part of it is there's no way that you can even say which person had what to do with what. Like I said, it's the equivalent of let's say, you know, let's say a lot of plantations had house Negroes, and you had certain house Negroes that would tell on the other mm-hmm. people who were enslaved. Mm-hmm. So imagine, like, I couldn't imagine someone coming to me and say, hey, you know, back in 1600, your ancestor sold my ancestor out, and therefore they got sold to some owner, and blah blah blah. All this happened to my family, and you're looking at me as being the cause of that, instead of looking at the fact that they were under an institution of slavery. Mm-hmm. You know, that it just doesn't make logical sense. You know, the other thing about it that we have to understand is that a lot of those people who participated in the slave trade will later become victims of the slave trade. So if you are African American, you likely are also descended from people who also sold their relatives or their people into slavery. Right. So it's just it's a stupid, you know, mentality to me. That the thing to focus on is not, you know, so there's a possibility that this African person may have been descended from someone that sold my ancestor into slavery. Right. Instead of looking at that, understand that there was a bigger global phenomenon happening. That was the partition of Africa that was coming. That was the enslavement of African people for labor. And understand that they did not look at us as any different from whoever participated in the slave trade. They looked at us equally for the purpose of Western consumption, and they ultimately did to us the same thing. So, you know, I encourage, you know, if any of my brothers and sisters have a hard time getting over that, you know, take some time and just think about the effects of what the West did, instead of focusing on the individual pockets of people who might have played a part inside of the slave trade.
Yeah, the ridiculous thing about it for me is the idea that some people seem to superimpose that as a majority, like as in everybody that was left was a slave seller.
Right.
That left was being sold into slavery. It's like,
right.
I didn't mean to go down that road. It was just a thing. We got Brother Jacob on the for the super chat. We did highlight it before, but we do make a point of bigging up and thanking ones and ones for the super chat. Although I know God of Jacob, I'm relatively sure that he has profound disagreements with what we were just discussing. But that's like God. We give thanks for the super chat same way, and the support, even in spite of difference, is even more appreciated. God of Jacob. Right, sis. So in relation to this now, yeah. Funnily enough, it's been said a number of times publicly in the last year that, you know, the rest of the Black diaspora never speak up for Black people in America, especially Africans on the continent. But we've seen like a whole number of people, especially in the last month, speak up. And that's not new for me, but it just seems like it's been more prominent now. But and we know that there are Pan-African organizations that have always done this on the ground, grassroots on the continent. It's not usual that level of speaking out reaches the government. And when you see that the Ghana government do like a whole ceremony, you know, honoring George Floyd, what do you, as a Pan-Africanist, how do you analyze something like that, specifically from a governmental point of view perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think number one, it's like Kwame Ture said, you know, like everything is like a progression. You know, does that mean that, you know, everything is going to be fine? it means that we're closer to global Pan-Africanism to me. The fact that, number one, I think, first of all, when I talk to people who, you know, are of continental Africans, one, there's like a sentiment that for a long time they just didn't know. And now in this age of social media, everyone knows, you know, no one can say that, you know, the United States is good to African people. No one can say that unless they're willingly trying to not see what's happening, right? So number one, the fact that you have the awareness out there, but two, the fact that we have this recognition that we are the children of Africa. You know, you had I seen the Ghana, I think it was a tourist department, someone who's over that, she said, you know, come home. Like, why are you, you know, staying there to deal with, you know, this type of treatment? There's a lot of people who are appalled because they see that, number one, we are being persecuted because we're African. And so it's really hard to turn a cheek, even for puppet regimes, you know, inside of Africa. Like, if the sheer focus or the sheer purpose of these types of acts are to oppress us for our African identity, then that concerns Africa everywhere. And so even with recharge colonialism, you know, we're starting to push the idea that we need to try to get some type of recognition, be that observer status or full status by the African Union, because now more than ever, you see different African heads of state who, you know, the United States has always controlled international policy, but they're emboldened inside of this moment to actually speak out against the acts and atrocities of the United States. And to me, more now than ever, that's a showing that we can actually push the agenda to have some type of formal recognition of African solidarity around the world.
It occurs to me that if we can spend inordinate amounts of time trying to convince the governments of Europe and America to treat us better, it seems to me that we can put at least as much energy into battling with our governments in nations where we are the majority in terms of more Pan-African. That seems to make more sense to me. Let's get to the Recharge Colonialism Action Plan. I'm gonna open up the lines and we'll get in some more issues, you know, from there. But big up. So before I get to this, sorry, sis, quick thing. Subscribe to this channel on the screen right about now. Our brother had a documentary. Yeah. So this I'm not even gonna say no more. Let's check it out. And thank you for this comment. Close to 2 million or more were saved from coming here due to wars against slavery on the continent. I just want to make that point that people act as though the fight against enslavement started in the diaspora. It did not. It started on the continent. Yeah, that there are Africans on the continent that were fighting against the institution of the enslavement of African people. And little as it's known, Africans from different groups actually formed united fronts to attack the system of slavery or to defend different groups from the enslavement process, kings and queens. And so, yeah, we need to know our history a bit more. This is a European colonial narrative. They start the slavery process with African kings and chiefs selling us into slavery, and then they end it with William Wilberforce and Abraham Lincoln freeing us from slavery. We really need to get out of that colonial historical narrative. Sorry, my sister, that was a bit brief aside.
No problem.
I do get kind of passionate about this issue. It needs to dead. This narrative needs to dead. I want to kill
it's starting to die out. I don't know if you noticed, but
you think so? All right, I hope so, sis. I'm seeing more and more brothers and sisters joining certain groups. So yeah, we'll see, innit? Yeah. Anyway, let's get into the thing. So because I really want to do this now because I feel like it's important for us not to just analyze Wagwan, but to present alternative modes of activity and activism. And I feel like some of the things that you're doing and you're developing with Recharge Colonialism gives an insight into that. So what are the aims, the objective, the action plan of Recharge Colonialism?
Well, I don't have the action plan in front of me,
all right.
But in a nutshell, to go from my memory, you know, our idea is, number one, we really have to raise in the United States the recognition that we are an African people. Without that consciousness, you know, there's no unifying purpose. And also, I think recognizing that gives us a deeper understanding of why we're facing the hell that we're facing. It's one thing to look at slavery as an isolated institution, but when you understand colonialism as a global phenomenon against African people in particular, although obviously other types of people as well, it gives you a better understanding of the fact that we are facing a global system, and so we need global solutions to a global system. So, you know, one, you know, we try to put out messages, we try to raise the consciousness of people in our community. But the purpose is that we can grow coalitions and come together for the purpose of appealing to outside international institutions. So in the action plan, we identified the United Nations as one. Obviously, I just spoke to the African Union, which I think a lot of us in our group were starting to become more have more affinity for, especially given everything that's happened. You know, a lot of people are just like, what's the point when it comes to dealing with these white institutions? And we do recognize that the United Nations, we've always recognized the United Nations is a colonial force in itself. It's never been going to the United Nations for the purpose of, or the thought that they were actually going to be the one to tear down colonialism in the United States. The belief was that going to the United Nations is as a way to grow global Pan-Africanist awareness of what's going on in the US. So, you know, the idea though, regardless, United Nations or African Union, is really international solidarity for our people, and that we start looking at the institutions of the US to do right by us and start looking towards what a global Pan-Africanist movement has to offer for people of African descent in the United States.
Give him thanks, sis. Give him thanks. I'm going to share the link out now for people that want to interact with you. So, kings and queens, you have the opportunity to interact with Sister Afrikan Esquire. Feel free to come through. For quality control, come through with your mic muted. And yeah, feel free to ask a question, even raise a challenge, as long as it's respectful. We welcome even your challenges, kings and queens. I just want to make that point. So the link is in the chat. Now, sis, on the subject of international solidarity, I know somebody in the UK right now is saying, well, really, we've got issues of black deaths in custody in the UK, and it's true, we do. A brother was killed and you know, it's been happening since the time that we've been here. Yeah, the first recorded case of police brutality or deaths in custody, as my father, when he was on last week, was explaining, is David Olusoga, yes, in 1969. So we've been dealing with this for generations. But the talk is that oftentimes our brothers and sisters in the States don't seem as in tune with Wagwan with us over here as we seem to be with them over there. Like there's been a number of marches in relation to Black Lives Matter and Black Lives in this country in relation to things that happen in the States. But beyond that, to put us all on blast at the moment, the same time that George Floyd was killed, a young 14-year-old in Brazil by the name of João Pedro Matos Pinto was actually also gunned down by the police in Brazil. And so it appears that for obvious reasons, we in the West have a louder voice when it in this world of social media and kind of things there when it comes to certain issues. So does it appear that when it comes to international solidarity, do we need to be more in tune as a people? Especially as people that live in the first world with Wagwan in Brazil and Angola and Congo and stuff like that, you know what I'm saying? And how do we develop that?
So I think one thing is that one of the big goals of I guess the slave masters was that they separate us mentally and psychologically from Africans around the globe. There was a real purpose in trying to get us to not think that we're African, because if we thought that we were African, we would think that we have somewhere to go back to, if you know what I'm saying. And so that's really what I think actually is existence today, because what I see is that a lot of our people, they first of all, with the brother in Brazil, and that story was very sad. I think that first of all, a lot of us don't actually understand that being Latino doesn't mean you're not African. As silly as that sounds. I mean, and I think some Latinos also don't know that, because I remember one sister I knew back in the day, and I'm looking at her. I'm like, oh, you're black. And she's like, no, I'm Puerto Rican. I'm looking this dark skin, curly hair. And I'm like, you're black, So there's that separation, number one, that I think has actualized in our consciousness. As far as the UK, I think first of all that Europe has really put out this this narrative as being like a post-racial society. And you hear about, different rappers, they might go to Europe and they're like, oh, it's nothing like the US. And, that's the image that's kind of put out there. So I'll say for me, like I've always known that there was racism over in Europe, just because I more so would recognize it in the context of the fact that, well, you can't say you're not racist if you're practicing colonialism. But more and more, I think we're understanding that no, the same type of caste systems that exist in the United States also exist in Europe. The same type of state-sponsored violence also exists in Europe. But it seems, and you're more in a position to tell than me, it seems like the avenues to express that are just not there, as opposed to here where, there's certain voices, whether or not I agree with them. But there are if something happens, Al Sharpton's, going to be in the front. Like there's people I associate here with that being, their platform. And I don't have that recognition too much.
They're about, but you're right. The voices that nobody over here, especially on the issue of police brutality, has the profile of Al Sharpton. There are many who have a track record of an Al Sharpton in terms of application to the issue, but none who have the profile, in that kind of way. But yes, I want to shout out, I've done it before, but once again, Uncle Minka Adofo, because he's been on the front line of issues to do with black left and custody and police brutality since the 70s. Yeah. Right. Front line and in terms of as well, not just campaigning on the issues, but supporting the families, and continuing to support the families when it's no longer a news story. There are groups and organizations who are supporting families in court cases and helping them get legal representation day in, day out in relation to their families being killed in custody and advocating on their behalf in front of the authorities. All them kind of things. There's a lot of work that goes on that our people are not necessarily aware of. But again, I mean, for Africans in the UK, a lot of us are not really even knowing really what's going on in France and Spain, right? What I'm saying, and Germany and them kind of things there. So it just requires us to do more work. And luckily, we live in the 21st century, whereby the European has commandeered enough resources from Sierra Leone and Congo to give us laptops and computers and phones with internet. And so we should be able to spread information a bit better, nowadays than we do. Yeah. We have somebody who wants to interact with you, my sister. Greetings, witness. Sorry.
Good afternoon. Sorry I don't mean to take up much of your time. I was listening to your discussion about Pan-Africanism. I just wanted to, even though I like the sentiment of Pan-Africanism, I just wanted to ask the question in relation to Pan-Africanism. It lacks power. Now, what I mean is, if you cannot protect your people locally or nationally, how can you empower your people internationally? Now, when I say you cannot protect your people locally or nationally, I look at what's going on in the United States of America and the UK, and both of you brought it up, which is police brutality. And we constantly see how black men and black women are constantly being violated. Coincidentally, are you both aware that back in 2015, 12 New York police officers tried to sue the NYPD because they believed that they had been trying to push out what they call arrest quotas. Even though they're illegal, they have been told to push out arrest quotas, which involved arresting a certain amount of black and brown people. I believe one of the black Americans who took them to court, who's a police officer, was Edwin Raymond. And there was another guy called Serrano. They took the NYPD to court back in 2016. And at the moment, the class legal suit has been stalled. So the NYPD hasn't been found guilty. But the point that I'm making is that there seems to be a lack of power within Pan-Africanism, right, which is allowing various people to be exploited. So I'm saying basically, if you can't protect your own people locally, And that's not just to the Americans, even in the UK. If we can't protect our own people locally, how are we going to start talking about internationally? We're going to bring people together and we're going to solve this problem. Because as you both have mentioned, even internationally, the leaders in those African countries are corrupt and they're part of the neo-colonial system. So realistically, shouldn't Pan-Africanism work from the bottom before working from the bottom to the way up, instead of trying to look at this global international thing? I mean, if you got neighborhoods in America where you have food deserts, where you don't even have Black Americans providing food for other Black Americans, if you're struggling, the same thing in the UK, most of our stores in Black neighborhoods aren't even run by Black people. So there's no form of national empowerment, but then you're thinking about empowering Black people internationally, economically. It just seems like a pipe dream. I mean, Pan-Africanism just lacks power locally. I mean, forget about promoting it to other Black people. I mean, locally, Black people don't have power to protect ourselves legally. How many Black Americans are governors in the US? I don't think there are any at the moment. But you do have a good track record for having Black people as mayors and stuff, but you don't have Black governors. I mean, we have a few Black MPs in the UK, but they're toothless. They don't do anything that helps. So it's like, how can you preach Pan-Africanism internationally when you lack power locally to make a change? I don't get it. That's
So,
got the questions, bro. Go ahead.
So what I would say is, I think you skirted around the issue. You said, how could we not protect our people locally, but protect our people internationally? What I would like to pose to you is, perhaps the reason why we cannot protect our people locally is because we cannot protect our people internationally. And I'll give you an example. When we say Pan-Africanism, what we're essentially saying is that African people all around the world, that we have a common plight, and that there's not going to be any liberation for any of us as long as you're able to have situations like a George Floyd with no ramifications, as long as you're allowed to have situations like the looting of the Congo, as long as you're allowed to have these situations and there's no power base to counter those types of attacks, then you're going to essentially see a continuous of these instances of violence against our people. With that in mind, you have to keep in mind that the way that America has been able to continue its power is not just because of domestic politics, but it's because of international politics. When you hear about things about the European Union, what would make these different European states come together? When you hear about things about the different treaties that America or the coming together of American forces with different Western forces, what would make them come together? They came together because of common interests. And if it was not for that coming together, they would not have had the ability to raid Africa. They would not have had the ability to do the international, the transatlantic slave trade. They just wouldn't have the power. So if we're talking about having power to protect, having been a people who have been completely separated from the continent, having been a people who are isolated, we have no ability whatsoever to protect outside of us appealing to appealing to our oppressors, appealing to their morals to stop oppressing us. And if you know anything about the oppressor, you know that as long as it's going to benefit the oppressor to oppress us, they're not going to stop. So we really have no other ramifications of protection, and that is because we don't have international backing. We don't have an ability to put pressure on these governments that are doing these things. There's so many mass atrocities that are happening, and the common factor is that our people are under siege without any power base to counter the international scheme that has been done against us.
Any follow-up there with this?
I just wanted to ask, yes, most of the stuff you're saying I don't disagree with, but in the United States of America, neighborhoods that are heavily populated with the Nation of Islam, can the police just go in there and brutalize the people in those neighborhoods who are Nation of Islam? I don't think they can. Neighborhoods where they have their mosques, where they have their stores, where they have a presence there, where they are running things. Can the police just walk in there and just brutalize them?
I've been in neighborhoods that were populated by Nation of Islam. Listen, Nation of Islam is certainly an organization that has done a lot for our people. There's certainly an organization that's pulled together resources and been able to do some of the impossible, but they are in no ways able to counter police violence. Now one thing, I was very appreciative of them is that when you had things like, I'll give you an example, during the Freddie Gray Baltimore riots, and Baltimore, is a city that has a good presence of the Nation of Islam. You had the Nation of Islam take the role of trying to stop people from looting Black businesses. But as far as can it counter police power? No, I don't think anyone in the Nation of Islam would make that claim, that their ability to pull together has meant that they're able to protect themselves against police violence. Although, again, I'd rather us be together, than to be dispersed. But I don't think that actualizes into us being any more protected than had they not been there.
Yep, it just falls into what I'm saying, because in America, you have a history of achieving power. Black Americans have a history of achieving that power economically. In the past, we know that you had successful towns that were run by Black people. You had your banks, you had your churches, you had your shops. And unfortunately, in the 1900s, with the race riots, a lot of those things were destroyed by white supremacists because you lacked military power to protect what you had.
By the government. Let's make that clear. The government was involved.
Sure. I won't dispute that locally. But what I'm saying is, Black Americans have a history where they achieved an amount of power, but that one piece of power they didn't have to protect what they had, the military power, allowed a lot of their cities to be destroyed. But what I'm saying is, how are you going to go up to a local Black person who's living in a food desert, who experiences police brutality on a regular basis, and you're trying to talk to him about Pan-Africanism when he has no form of protection for his Black brothers or sisters? I don't see how you're going to be able to sell that to them. That's the lack of power. That power is not there. And until Black people are able to, sorry, please continue.
No, I'm sorry, finish.
No, I was just saying, until Black people are able to achieve more than just economic power, because your people, you have a history of achieving that at a very high level. It was just that one thing you didn't have, which allowed all of your stuff to be taken away, your property, your land, your rights. But if you achieved that one thing, you were so close. If you achieved it, we wouldn't be here. But I'm saying even now we've regressed. Black people don't even have that kind of power that they had back in the 1900s. So if you don't have power, how can Pan-Africanism work internationally? I just see there's no power there. Even though I support it, there's no power.
So one thing, just to clarify, I wouldn't say our people at one point, we had internal mechanisms of economic survival. And some ways that might look like power, but keep in mind, as you pointed out with the Tulsa riots, what did they have to do? All they had to do was step in and basically say, all right, we're done with allowing you to have power. And you've seen a total reversal, and now those things don't exist. The reason why, the other reason why, it's not just state violence that killed those economic districts in the US, but really the big killer was integration. Because Black Wall Street, a lot of people don't know, Black Wall Street actually came back after the Tulsa riots. Now, albeit, was it smaller? Yes, but it did rebound. But the difference was that Black people, whenever they got the right to go into white establishments and go to white hotels and white public accommodations, they kind of abandoned the Black businesses. So that's just one clarification I did want to make. But as far as not going to a person on the street, all that takes is a level of consciousness, because you're not going to someone who's poor and saying, hey, we need you to fight for the Congo. We're not going to that person and saying, hey, we need you to.
Yeah, you're right.
Right. Like it's about number one, it's not just a one-time thing. It's about a constant struggle of organizing. It's about a constant struggle of consciousness. It's about a constant struggle of lifting your people up, which I think you might be alluding to that. I think what you're alluding to is organization. That's what we need. And that I completely agree with you. We do have to organize, and that's a task for us to partake in. And it's absolutely a goal, because if we're not organized in our local communities, then Pan-Africanism won't work. And it also has to be organization in Africa. One thing that I think is that as much as I can do YouTube videos, or if you have people putting different newscasters of talking about issues in Africa, we can do that all day. But if the people are not organized to take control, then we're doing fruitless work. So that's one thing that we're advocating with Pan-Africanism. We're not just advocating saying, hey, everyone, let's come together and, let's just be African. It's more than that. It's saying, I support, for example, what Julius Malema is doing in South Africa. support what Kimmy Siba is doing. Like I could support organizing locally for the ultimate purpose of us being able to come together as a people in an organized fashion.
Hoping that makes sense, brother Witness.
Yeah, all that makes sense. That all makes sense. And I don't dispute that. It's all well and good. All of that makes sense. But you need power. Without power, it's pointless. You're easily crushed like a cockroach. But I understand entirely what Tierney is saying, and I don't really dispute or have a problem with Pan-Africanism. I just notice we don't have power, but hopefully maybe things will change. Thanks very much for your time, Tierney, Shakara. And just one thing, anybody who's interested, just check out this American Edwin Raymond, who's a police officer, and just see what he and 12 police officers tried to do in suing the NYPD. That's all. Yes, sir. Thanks very much.
Brother God of Jacob did have a question earlier. I'm going to get back to that question, but he does have this to say. She is downplaying ADOS legacy achievements to promote her thing, basically saying they failed, follow my thing. So we'll get back to that in a second. But I'm inviting you on, God of Jacob, if you got something to say. And I know, our sister is very powerful. So I know there are many who are, not going to want to come and stand up in front of the smoke. Right? It's all good. I invite you to. You know what I'm saying? She's very warm at heart. So we give thanks. And let's reason, kings and queens. The link is in the chat. If you want to come through and reason with, ask a question, speak to Sister Tierney Sheree, also known as the Afrikan Esquire. Brother M.A. Brown, you're live.
Live and direct. Big up, brother. Greetings, Sister Tierney. I've got two questions for you. Well, for both of you, actually. You can both answer it. The first, you know what I'm like. Come on. Sorry, let me clear my throat. My throat's a bit funny today. My first question is, I've written it down, so I'll read it out. It says, a lot of information is being spread daily about vaccine trials and the rollout amongst Black people in the US, the UK, and Europe. We have people discussing leaving now to go to Africa, but we know the primary rollout was always likely to occur on the continent. With the control of the food stocks, seeds, and water pending, how urgent is the situation on a wider scale? Does that question make sense? It read sense to me, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not someone that comes out and takes firm stances on certain things just because I don't have all the information. But I'll say for me personally, I'm very wary about this vaccine, and I'm very wary, obviously, because of the history of medical trials being done on Black people. I thought it was very strange that there was some article that was saying not enough Black people are signing up for the vaccines, and so they need us to sign up. And my thing is, well, why do you need us to sign up if we all have bleed blood, and we all are humans? So why do you specifically need us to sign up? So I think that any mistrust of the vaccination process is justifiable, and I'm certainly have no intention of running to get a vaccine. I also think when you look at the wider context of what happened, as far as those French doctors, for example, saying that we need to test this vaccine on African people, I think that we can definitely understand that there might be other motivations behind certain things. I've heard of a lot of conspiracies, not enough that I have information on to take a firm stance on, but I certainly agree that we should be very reluctant to just jump and do something that to our bodies. For a system that has never even valued our bodies.
What Sister Tierney said, in the sense that I think it is very urgent. I think there's a lot more that needs to be done in terms of independent research on the medical industrial complex, the vaccination industrial complex, and its impact on our people. Not only from a medical point of view, like the question of whether vaccines are not safe is only one aspect of the question. It's also about the politics and the economics of medicine in today's world, and how it is distributed and how it is administered. Frankly, all of us Africans around the world are way too at the beck and call, subject to the beck and call of the World Health Organization and its various different arms in various different countries. And this kind of relates to what Witness was saying. The reality is, yeah, that in the answer to Witness's question is organization. That there is no inherent disempowerment that exists in Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism is an ideology. It is a movement that is as powerful as the organized body of the people that adhere to it. And so because of the fact that we have mass movements of our people, let's say mass movements, significant movements of our people that are anti-African, in an environment like that, there will be weakness in Pan-Africanism because many of us are running from even being African. You see what I'm saying? It's so, but whenever there has been a strong movement behind an African identity, we have demonstrated power and power potential. We only need call the name of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. We only need call the name of Omowale Malcolm X on Nkrumah and Lumumba, and we can see the power, not just that they manifested, but the potential that they manifested in terms of when you see things fell down, what they were on the verge of doing, what they were on the verge of accomplishing, like it was right there. You know what I'm saying? And so yeah, this idea that there's any more power in absorbing ourselves into the British identity or the American identity, and somehow magic wand is gonna, wipe away disempowerment from us is nonsense, and we need to do away with these illusions. I'm sorry to to go. I'm the interviewer today, not the interviewee, but yeah, you did ask the question, bro, and you know what you asked me, yeah, it can go certain places. Yeah,
I got a second question, but I'll ask it after Brother DNA.
No problems. Unwale. Your mic is muted, bro. Your mic is muted. I mute your mic. Oh, let me see if I can do it myself. Yeah. No, yes.
Hey, peace and blessings, brother. How are you?
Good to see you, bro. Live from the US of A.
Yeah, right here. In Newark, New Jersey. So I'm like 20 minutes outside of Brooklyn. I lived in Brooklyn like 15 years. So, but I'm sort of here to bring the more of the context around when we're talking about West Africa specifically, because I want to say specifically West Africa, and not to negate all of Africa, right? But we understand that the majority of us were brought from the West African part of the continent, and the Caribbean and the States. Now, some of the debates that we would get into at my university, it would be heated debates in regards to subject matter like this, right? On one side, you would have African Americans, continental Africans and Caribbeans. And on the other side, you would have quote unquote conscious Caribbeans, West Africans, and African Americans. Right, and there would be these heated debates, because if you don't have the context of Sheikh Anta Diop, if you don't have the context of Dr. Ben Yakin, and if you do not have the context of Dr. John Henry Clark, if you do not have the context of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, and we could go on and on and on, you're not going to have the ideological understanding and overstanding of Pan-Africanism. Now, if we want to talk about power, I do believe the brother has a very valid point. So many people talk about, because it wasn't just one Black Wall Street, there were several, right? There were many, and we're not even going to talk about the ones that we haven't even seen, right? That we don't know about. And so I'm saying that to say, I give a quick backdrop. I teach high school. I'm a history teacher, an African-American history teacher for high school, as well as an adjunct professor at Kane University in Afrikan Studies Department and Interdisciplinary Studies. So I'm saying that just in regards to understanding that I'm around this context and this discourse all the time, this constant debate. And we have to understand that, yeah, the brother had a point in regards to the power. And I'm also putting a quote. I said that the Nation of Islam was at its power, at its peak, and I would say the 60s and the 70s. But we would not have been able to have a military to fight off any type of aggression. We weren't getting arms from Cuba, right? In regards to the Black Power movement at that time. So, but Pan-Africanism is important because just the mindset, the ideological perspective of being connected to your brothers and sisters, right? Around the globe. My mother told me at a very young age, I think she must have saw something on the news. I was like 6 or 7, and she was upset. And she said, I don't care what nobody ever tells you, Nware. Them people in Jamaica, those people in Africa, those are your cousins, in her accent, right? She said, those are your cousins. And so from a small age, I understood the diaspora connection. A lot of times here, we're getting into these debates, right? I'm working on a film. I've started filming already called Our God is Black. Are we running from white Jesus? Right? Meaning, and it's something, it's going to be around the Hebrew Israelites, the Moors, the Asar Set Society, the Kemetic, the Nuwapians, all of these groups.
You're looking to hurt feelings, bro.
Yeah, well, but this is important because I'm only going to talk about the positives of the ideological perspective of all of these groups because they're very pro-black. Then they may not necessarily be Pan-Africanists, but they're pro-black. But the Ifa, Yoruba, Akan societies, all these different ethnic groups, the Nation of Gods and Earths, and talking about all this dietary stuff that they brought out, right? All of these positive affirmations, right? But to get back on I don't want to jump off track here, but to get back on the issue of Pan-Africanism, and I'll make this last point because I'm getting a bit too long-winded. I'll make this last point. The ideological understanding of it, right? If we're familiar with history, like the Bandung Conference. I don't know if we're familiar, right? The conference where a lot of the countries who were on a certain ideological mindset of what was going on with the indigenous countries around the world coming together with a mindset to now move on. It's academia, ideological perspectives that paved the way to legislature, maybe not necessarily militarism, but just the understanding of it is very important, which could eventually lead to the understanding of what we need to do for our brothers and sisters. And I'll make this last point. There's brothers in New Zealand that's holding up the red, black, and green flag, not just after George Floyd, but they've been holding this up since the 60s and 70s. All right. So it's how we get that power. That's a different discussion. I do agree with what the brother was saying, but I'm more so in tow with what the sister's perspective is and points that the brother M.A. Brown was making on the chat.
Thank you, bro. Sister Tierney, any responses to that?
I mean, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. I believe that with the ADOS sentiment, honestly, I believe it's dying out. The reason why I believe it's dying out is I believe that more and more you have people being contradicted by just current events. I remember when it first came out, the whole idea that we're separating ourselves from Africans because they're not really our brothers and sisters. There wasn't a lot of Africans being filmed, at least, and distributed on the media supporting African Americans. However, now it's like there's so many things that are undeniable. There's so much global African unity that is being shown, that is being broadcast. Whether it's how the outrage against treatment of Nigerians in China, whether it's the outrage against French colonialism, and now with George Floyd. And so I think at least slowly we're going to start seeing a lot of these circles dwindling, because more and more we're hearing a lot of people talk about the fact that we are brothers and sisters, that we are in the same struggle. And so that's what I'm hopeful for seeing going forward.
Sis, we got a question from Gola Jacob, and I'm going to come back to you, M.A. Brown, in a second, and then we'll proceed to our conclusion shortly thereafter. By the way, we've got a call to get Brother Nware on the quarantine convos for a conversation, so we'll have to make that happen, bro. So you can, let people know about your beautiful works as an independent African filmmaker, out there, King.
Yeah, and thank you. And I totally forgot to make my point about ADOS. Totally forgot. I just want to make a quick point about that.
Go ahead.
I do agree with their perspective on things, but it's a very tough argument because if we begin to go into real historical research and study, like we could even talk about Minister Farrakhan and so many others, from Marcus Garvey and these people who are interconnected from the Caribbean. Who are very Pan-Africanist and pro-Black and everything else. So that's a tough thing. Now, when we want to talk about specific economic monies that might be doled out from reparations, then I sort of understand ADOS. But there are so many impactful Caribbean people of Caribbean descent that have affected this movement and has given us ideological jewels to follow. So that's a tough debate with the ADOS.
I do hear that. What was I doing? I was getting brother Brother Jacob's question in the situation. Orthodox More, I see you, bro. I'm only gonna go to God Jacob because I did highlight it before to get his question in, yeah. But thank you for your patience, bro. Right. Says, how do you promote, i.e. sell Africa to ADOS when Africans are breaking their necks to come to America? Make that make sense. Houston has a somewhat large Nigerian population. They miss the YOR, and I'm assuming that means year of return. And I do want to defend Sister Tierny 1 second, because Brother Jacob also said, I've seen her viz before, she's anti-ADOS. And I just want to clarify, correct me if I'm wrong, sis, but the first time you actually referenced ADOS specifically was in relation to Yvette Carnell's video, Pan-Africanism is Dead. And yes, you did a response to that, yeah? So yeah. I want to clarify that. I think it's very unfair that when somebody does a video called Pan-Africanism is Dead, and a Pan-Africanist actually responds to it, that they are now labeled anti-ADOS. I think that's a little bit unfair. I think it would be more proper to say that at least the leaders of the ADOS movement are anti-Pan-African and anti-African, in all fairness. But anyway, in relation to the question, yeah, how do you sell Africa to ADOS when Africans are breaking the nets to come to America?
First of all, I personally am of the mindset that I don't see why anyone would want to stay inside of a white supremacist society, you know, just stay with no idea of going back towards Africa. That being said, am I saying that every single person has to go back to Africa? Absolutely not. A lot of our people, when we understand they're coming to America, they're not coming to America because, you know, they just love America. In fact, a lot of, if you talk to different immigrant groups, a lot of them really don't have any affinity for America. They're coming to America because the policies of America, just as the policies of Europe and the policies of China and all these places, have robbed Africa of its substance. So how do you raid other parts of the world, and whenever those people without any economic viability inside of the countries that you are raiding now say, well, listen, I have to feed my kids, so let me try to find somewhere where I can actually survive, and come to your country that is guilty of raiding those countries? How do you even feel as though they're trying to run away from Africa? They're not running away from Africa. They're running away from the effects of colonialism. So I think that when I say that, you know, it's not about selling Africa. It's about waking up to your identity. It's about waking up to the common struggle. It's about waking up to the fact that you, as you reference yourself as ADOS. I don't, but I'll say you as ADOS, you have no chance of obtaining real freedom and equality inside of a white supremacist system that was literally founded on your enslavement. And if you think that those people who were so morally corrupt that they were willing to take your people from your civilization and make you work for them and lynch you and rape your woman and do all these things just to cripple you for centuries, if you think those people who are of that nature are going to turn around and say, okay, we're going to do right by you, I always say, on what basis? What is your precedent that makes you think that these people are going to do you right? Like, why would you feel that way? So what we're saying, again, is not about selling Africa. It's about selling the fact that we are all being colonized. It's about selling the fact that if one is colonized, then all of us are affected. And you can very well stay in America if you choose to, and recognize that you are part of a Pan-Africanist struggle. Again, Pan-Africanism, it doesn't necessarily mean everyone repatriate back to Africa. What it means is everyone realize that we are all connected as Africans. So it's more of a consciousness, it's more of an awareness, and it's more of a global organizing, whether you're organizing in America or whether you're organizing in Africa. Frankly, you don't ever have to go to Africa. Marcus Garvey never went to Africa. Guess what? He's the greatest, in my opinion, the greatest Pan-Africanist that's ever lived. So this idea that, we're trying to sell Africa instead of sell African solidarity. I think you're just confusing the issues.
Well, we can also do both. We can do both. And I speak about that all the time. I always talk about making sure that, let's say, people have issues with the DNA genetics. I understand that. But you can actually, get land, get property, try to deal with some of the politics and social, cultural things that go on there, and still have your citizenship here. Yeah. We had this situation with Liberia, if you're familiar with the history, Monrovia. But this was the problem, and this is what I don't want to happen. If you remember what's called the Americos, right? These were the Liberians, and that mindset it led to one of the worst civil wars on African soil, one of the worst, not the worst, because we brought a certain colonized mentality to the indigenous group, which eventually led all the way up, to this regime. And then there was one of the worst civil wars that happened. If you're familiar with the Americos, and there's a book of several books around what happened. So we've been coming here, if you are familiar with, I think, the ACS, the American Christian Society. I think when Abraham Lincoln was trying to, they were trying to figure out how to get rid of us.
The American Colonization Society.
Colonization Society. My apologies. And they've been trying to get rid of us for the longest. So James Monroe, which is Monrovia, right, which was named after him. Eventually, we wound up establishing, some type of status there to try to get us to repatriate, because they wanted to get rid of us. I think my personal thing is, again, we can do both. We can go back, have land, get into the politics and everything. That would be another discussion, right? But still have our homeland. That's our homeland. We can be angry that one group sold the other group out, if you believe that fallacy, right? Because we do not understand the differences between Ewe, Twi, Akan, Bamaleke, right? Ashanti, Xhosa, all of these different ethnic groups. There was no such thing as this black word, right? Or this kind of, they had brotherhood, but it was a different thing. It's almost as if someone completely from another place is enslaving another different people, right? They didn't see each other like that at the time. And so we have this now mindset, and we're trying to connect those dots with now, and it doesn't apply. So it's tough to have that
conversation. My experience, bro, is that some people actually just don't want to understand that because it's an ideological thing. Just what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're built on an ideology that tells you that you're not African and are hostile to Africans, who cares whether Africans view themselves as the same or not? And who fought? You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? But anyway, there's an interesting thing, is when you're an actual speaker, presenter, as well as an interviewer. Like sometimes you get like some opportunity whereby the need to do one is conflicting with the need to do the other. So I'm gonna resist, the urge right now to delve into the conversation. And facilitate the conversation by bringing in the brother Orthodox Moor. And we did have Sister Tierney for an allotted period of time. So if you need to leave, sis, then say. But we're going to keep you here for as long as we can. While we're going to wrap up the conversation.
I'll stay a few more minutes. I do hear my baby calling me. So.
Yeah, all right. Okay. I'm thinking so as well. So yeah. So we've got to wrap up soon, Kings and Queens. So go ahead, Orthodox Moor.
Yeah, bless and big up the panel, and gratitude for gotkushTV consistently bringing through good content during this Corona situation and whatnot.
We appreciate it, bro.
Yeah, I got one quick question for the sister. I won't keep it too long. What do you think we can do as Americans to be more of an asset as Pan-Africans, etc., and whatnot, for Africans coming into this country and Caribbeans coming into this country and whatnot?
Woo! What a question. Sorry, go ahead, bro. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Are you done? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'll leave it right there. I can expound, but I'll leave it right there.
One thing I was actually reading an article today. It was an African sister that wrote it, and she was basically saying that she felt like a lot of African immigrants, continental African immigrants, have not participated in the Black Lives Matter movement, and there's kind of been, I guess, like a, well, that's them, you know, this is us type of mentality. I think that one thing that you realize, number one, is that people come to America with different agendas. And my experience with brothers and sisters from the Caribbean or from Africa, when they come to America, is usually like a strictly economic agenda. But what you have to understand is that you're coming into a white supremacist society, albeit with the economic agenda, but how much are you willing to allow yourself to be, I guess, compromised in order to accomplish your economic goals? Mm-hmm. So I say that to say that, to me, the biggest thing that we can do for our brothers and sisters of the immigrant communities who come to America is just help them realize that you are not going to be exempt from the type of state-sponsored oppression that's happening of Black people. When you see things happening, when you see things being done easily to us, that means that they're going to do it easily to you. And I try to, put out messages of I guess, understanding that it's our skin that is going to be a target for oppression. It's our identity that's going to be a target for oppression. And if you think that in this society you have anything to gain other than what we have been given, then you're going to, I think over time, you're going to realize that the mirage of American exceptionalism and the mirage of success and how this is a land of opportunity, I think in a while it will have to dim. So more and more, I think with the Trump presidency, however, a lot of people are more aware of this racist the racism of this society. But whenever Trump's out of office, it's going to be the same thing. Understand that you're coming into a system where there is essentially a race war going on. And so, solidarity would be the best thing that I would say for our brothers and sisters who are from outside communities.
All right. Right now, as it stands, sorry, go ahead, brother Emma, if you got a brief follow-up. And I do mean brief. I don't want to tell you, but yeah, we do have to proceed towards the close of the show. Sorry, who did I say, MA or Orthodox?
You said MA.
Oh, sorry, I meant Orthodox. Sorry, I'm coming back to MA in a second. Sorry.
I just wanted to say thank you for the answer, and I appreciate your time, sis.
All right, give thanks, brother Orthodox. More appreciate the question. Right, so here's what we're gonna do. I've got a question in the chat. I'm gonna give MA the time to ask this next question, and then we're gonna wrap up there. Yeah. Because Sister Tierney needs to go. So MA, go ahead very quickly.
Okay, yeah, give thanks. It's a question that doesn't necessarily need to be answered now, but I was wondering if anyone on the panel believes that there are ways that we are functioning as a Pan-African community that are maybe producing too much extra work for ourselves, whether it be the mode of delivery, whether it be the collaboration with others who are not Black. In general, are there any areas of activity that we're engaged in where we could operate more efficiently and maybe we're producing more work? For example, on social media, sometimes you see progress and then you see regression in terms of the types of stuff that people are saying. And I'm interested in that dynamic.
I'll say for me, I think that we have to focus more on the people. A lot of times when I hear Pan-Africanist dialogues, a lot of times you'll see people who have political positions, or maybe it's like a CEO and he wants to talk about bringing Africa together and whatnot, without enough emphasis on the actual African people. I do think there has to be more of an effort to organize us, and just us. I'm not against coalitions after we've organized among ourselves, but until we're organized among ourselves to actually bring about some type of change, then we're always going to be playing second chair, even if it's inside of our own liberation. So certainly, I do think that there has to be more emphasis on organizing the people on the ground. When I look at, whether it's African people in the U.S. or in the continent, I just see so many people who have nothing to lose. And if we put the time and investment into waking up their consciousness to their condition, I know I'm poor, but why? How did I get in the state? I know I'm exploited, but how? How can I change it? I think if there was a real effort to go into these ghettos, to go into places where our people are significantly economically deprived, and really wake them up, but really it's organize with them. I think that's what the West would really be in fear of. Like, could you imagine if, you know, there was a real effort to go into, we talked about the Congo earlier, go into the Congo and really organize among those communities? You'd probably see a lot of panic coming from places that are enjoying the resources from there. So that's what I think.
Thank you very much, sis.
Can I say one thing about that?
1 second, bro. I do want to get this from the chat in, and I know sister has to go. So wherever she comes to you is that her liberty. But I do want to just get this question in very quickly. Thank you very much, Miss Amelia, for your super chat. The question is, do we as Pan-Africanists organize too much within colonial frameworks? For example, along linguistic groups such as Spanish-speaking, English, French, etc.
Definitely. And it's definitely, I don't know how exactly to change it. I mean, I'll say for me, like there's a number of people who are French-speaking Africans, and I know what they're doing as far as like, you know, I'll read articles, but I'm trying to understand and I'm not necessarily getting it as much as I could. So those are, I mean, those are things that we have to figure out a way to bridge the gaps. Because I think that I mentioned Kimi Siba earlier. I think if there was a way that he could be communicated to every single African person, then his movement would just have such a greater effect than what it has, because of the fact that he's just French speaking, or I don't know if he speaks English, but I've only heard him speak French.
He does speak English, so just a quick plug. And we have his first English speaking speech on this particular channel. We hosted him in December, and anyway, so he spoke in English for the majority of his presentation, and we organized a translator for when he spoke in French. So you can check that out, sis, as well. But anybody else who's listening, check out Brother Kemi Seba. And he has a grassroots movement that spans across a number of different African countries, specifically galvanized in relation to getting rid of the French currency. So don't let anybody ever tell you that there's not Pan-African organization going on the continent of Africa. It's not true. Sorry, sister, go ahead.
No, but that's basically, you know, I think that if someone like that, you know, did have ability to communicate to the masses, then that would just be a big game changer. So I would certainly, you know, the issue is, it's like, do we pick a colonial language? Like, you know, ideally, you know, we could pick an African language, but everyone have to learn that one language. So, you know, maybe we have to put more effort into translating. I don't know what the necessary solution is, but I do think that things like language really have been a barrier to Pan-African unity.
Yes, sis. Sis, I'm gonna give you the opportunity to engage on Wale if you're able, and if you're not, he won't take it personally. I promise. I can speak on behalf of that in that respect. But
no. Well, I think we're on the same page, but it's funny. I put the notes down in regards to African-centered schools. We could get this from the gate. And when I got to see the brother Chakra when I was in London, and got to, you know, visit Paris and a couple of different places, I was shocked that we didn't have African-centered schools. And everybody that I talked to around my experience, it was the brother Chakra who opened me up when he said, the fact that you guys call yourselves African American is in itself something that we don't comprehend when we're here in the States. And that's something I didn't understand. And so those are the things when we're dealing with colonialism, right? When the brother Akala at the school, the center, I forget where it was where I screened my film, that was Akala often talks about Saturday school that he had, and that's why I screened my film. And I said, wow, Saturday school, we have schools here in the States. And so imagine that on a global, this is when we say what they don't want, right? But what are the solutions? What Malina Karanga, who created Kwanzaa, right? We have our own holidays, right? I know people who are part of the Ifa, the African Americans, but they're part of the Ifa religious culture. They don't practice, you know, Easter, Christmas, any of those things. And no disrespect for people who follow that, but we, you know, I don't take July 23rd. I don't work on that day. That's Haile Selassie's birthday. I tell people from the gate when I get to work, when I start a new job, I can't work on that day. And so Kiswahili was the language that Malana Karanga was talking about as a universal language. So I believe that there are solutions. It's just us with our colonial imperialist, I don't want to say cool, but this mindset that we have that won't allow us to embrace who we are. And then there's the debates of, are we more? Are we? Israelite, are we this, are we that? That's a different discussion. But I think those, and that's why I want to do this film, or why I'm working on it, because they have, when I know those families, they're not celebrating none of this stuff. You know what I mean? And they're teaching each other Hebrew, or they might be teaching, you know, the language of Chui, or you know, or the language in the household. So it can be done. Now I don't know if we can get on one page, but I definitely think African-centered schools for people coming from the Caribbean is in Africa and in America. We have to know Sheikh Anta Diop. We have to know Dr. Ben. We have to know Francis Cresswell, and then that affects Pan-Africanism going forward.
You got a response to that, sis?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree. That was always, to me, been one of the central things as far as whenever we have our people come into a certain mindset in adulthood, but we missed the opportunity to intervene when they were children and when their mindset was being formulated. And I was particularly thinking about a lot of our brothers and sisters. For some reason, recently, it's been on my heart. A lot of the interracial violence, or black on black crime, as some people call it. The fact that at a certain level, the best time to intervene in the mindset that could say that I can kill my brother and my sister, and it's fine, is whenever you're children and you're learning your self-worth. So definitely, I think Pan-Africanist education, Black-owned, Black-ran projects to educate children, I think that's definitely something that we have to push.
Sis, I'm gonna I've brought up the website wechargecolonialism.org, and just to say the founding principles. Well, sorry, let me get to the action plan actually, and just say very, very quickly. You can read this on the website. Point number one is we make a clear identification of ourselves as African people, and there's an explanation as to why, but I won't go into that. 2, we will designate and organize strategic African American communities for self-determination, which is where power comes in. 3, we will exhaust political and legal remedies to decolonize our communities. 4, we will connect ourselves with the global African struggle for human rights. 5, we will go to the United Nations if the US government fails to act. And 6, freedom by any means necessary. So go and check out the website for the more in-depth explanations of the platform right there. My sister, I'm going to give you an opportunity to say any closing words that you wish to say. And brothers, I'm gonna do something that I don't normally do, because I feel like the brothers got a couple more things to say, but I know the sister has to go. Yeah, so I'm gonna let the sister go, and we're gonna keep the stream running for like 5-10 minutes. Yeah, just for the brothers them to offload. But let's respect our sister's time and her son's time as well. And so, any closing words, Sister Tierney?
Closing words, just for our people to understand that this time that we're in, that it is very special and it is very much an opportunity for us. I think what's going to happen, which I always predict whenever it comes to Black Lives Matter because of the way that they operate, is that you're going to see a lot of symbolism. You're going to see a lot of movement that's not significant, and then there's going to possibly be a dying down of momentum. So I would caution our people to take advantage. And part of that taking advantage, I think, is taking the movement back from the white public that has taken the movement from you and made it their movement. Take the movement from them, come up with what your actual interests are, and figure out how we are going to actually create meaningful change. So I think there's an opportunity for us as far as people in America, African people on the continent. As I said earlier, I think there's a great opportunity, not just with Pan-African solidarity, but with the fact that you're going to see a lot of different political changes from the COVID-19 pandemic. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities for us. And I think we have to brainstorm. We have to get together with our organizations or our local groups and come up with strategies to seize the opportunity that we have in front of us.
Thank you very much, Sister Tierny. We want to just appreciate you for joining us on gotkushTV. We are appreciators of your work, the work that you are doing. And we want to encourage everyone listening right now to subscribe to Afrikan Esquire TV. Yeah, just do that right now. You're on YouTube already, so just go upon, open up a new window, a new tab, go to Afrikan Esquire TV and subscribe to Sister Tierny's channel and stay tuned for more. I want to invite you next week on my own channel, Shakara Speaks. I'm going to be starting a series leading up to August on Marcus Mosiah Garvey, where I'm going to be tackling a lot of this stuff to do with power, African education and stuff like that. So Sister Tierney, do join me next week, Wednesday, for that on Shakara Speaks. But thank you once again, sis. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
And give your son a hug from all of us at gotkushTV.
I will. All right, see you.
Take care. That was Sister Tierney Sheree, Kings and Queens of Afrikan Esquire TV. Once again, I said to you, subscribe to the thing. Yeah, subscribe to the thing. And yeah, we want to appreciate our sister for opening up a beautiful conversation. It's got the tongues wagging, and the man them don't want to leave the panel. It looks like everybody look very relaxed, and they want going have some serious conversation. Well, me have picked it too, so I'm gonna stay around here the whole night, right? So we're gonna give an opportunity for a little bit more further conversation. So anybody can go first. Just to wrap up, any reflections on what you've heard from our sister, you know what I mean, as we close the show.
Well, I just appreciate you, brother, creating this platform, and so happy to see it come along and everything that you've been doing so far. And then when you had the brothers, Red Pill and Blue Pill, and everybody came over to London, and I missed that. I was so disappointed that I missed that. But just appreciate everything that you're doing, brother. So I'll definitely leave it there. As you know, I could go on and on, but I'll leave it there.
Yes, sir. I just want to say, it ain't just me. We've got a team here at gotkushTV. You know what I'm saying? I'm just one of the brothers. And yeah, man, we want to big up the whole directorship, and not even just the directorship, the whole team, because the team keeps growing. And we've got a new show launching on Monday as a result of that. And we want to big up all the people that we're collaborating with to make Saturday happen as well, which is the Black Group Economics show all day. We're going to have a lot of powerful conversation and demonstration of Black Group Economics in action on that day as well. So I just want to give thanks. But thank you, bro. And we're going to get you on again to talk about your works. It's very, very important. We need more filmmakers. And as you know, we're soon going to be contributing to that effort and that endeavor soon, King. So
appreciate that, brother.
In fact, anybody else got a word?
Yeah, quickly before I jump off, I just want to reiterate my gratitude for gotkushTV, because I have to say, as an American, I'm ashamed that I didn't even know about this until I watched it on here. So I appreciate your content for educating me on my own people in America. So
it's all love, bro. It's all love. That's what you call the power of Pan-Africanism.
Thanks.
And then, Ron, you got anything to say? And I know everybody's gonna bring a point, though. That's gonna require
no.
We're not gonna go for a question that's gonna have us here for another hour. You know what I mean?
I'm good, bro. I'm good.
Yeah.
Thanks for the show as usual. I'll be back whenever the next one is, Saturday.
Yes. We're here all weekend, to be honest. So yeah, no rest for the righteous, as they say. We're there the whole weekend, Phil. No. Yeah. So yeah. So stay tuned for that. Yeah. Big up yourself.
Big up M.A. Brown. Big up M.A. Brown.
Big up, brother. What's your name again? Sorry.
My name is Naware. Nware. Naware.
Naware. Okay. Big up, my brother. I look forward to seeing your film at some point as well. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely, brethren. Absolutely. Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody, man. Appreciate you brothers in London, man, and in England, and what you guys are doing, man. And we sleep over here on the States, man. You guys been doing some great things. So we really, really appreciate you guys, man.
Bro. Yeah, we'll make each other collectively stronger. You know what I'm saying? Thank you, brothers. Feel free to let yourself go as you will, as we wrap up the show. Peace, King. Thank you for joining me, King. Thank you for joining us.
Peace.
Yes, indeed, family. You know what I'm saying? That was a beautiful conversation. We got to deal with some different avenues and different strategies and different ideas relating to the activism of the now. I thought that perspective was important, and the sister is doing some fantastic work through her channel. And so, it's important that we expose our audience to her and her audience to us, and we're able to cross-fertilize and develop that collective power base that we're talking about, because one of the main areas that we are going to need to develop power bases in the now is in the area of media, independent media, kings and queens. And yes, indeed, as I said, next week on Shakara Speaks, I'm going to be beginning a series called The Prelude to Mosiah. For those who are unaware, this year, 2020 is the centenary of the International Convention of the Negro Peoples of the World that was held in 1920 in New York, where over 25,000 Black men, women, and children from around the world, I'm talking about the United States of America, the Caribbean, South and Central America, the African continent, and representatives were, and I mean that representatives were sent from the African continent, and representation was sent from as far as Australia, of Black people organizing in Madison Square Gardens in 1920. And so many of the Garveyites are gearing towards, Messiah or August of 2020, whereby we'll be, celebrating the anniversary and the 100th year anniversary of the red, black, and green, the RBG flag that was designated the flag of the African nation, the Black nation around the world, on the 13th of the month of Messiah in the year 1920, kings and queens. So do stay tuned from next week, Wednesday, for more information on that. We're going to go in and break it down, about how we have developed power bases in our history and how we can do that in the present day. And I've got international guests joining me for that series right here on gotkushTV. Yes, indeed, kings and queens. It's all about Black group economics all day. This coming Saturday, kings and queens. Yes, indeed, this coming Saturday, the 27th of June. We have the Black group economics all day. You do not want to miss this. Big up Brother Swiss from the legendary Soul Solid crew, who we interviewed a couple months ago, last month it was, in relation to his album Isolation and Music. But he is now put on a beautiful initiative called Black Pound Day. And so in support of Black Pound Day, we have a full lineup of heavyweight scholars, activists, and entrepreneurs ready to drop the statistics and kick the ballistics and bring the scientifics in relation to Black group economics in today's world, kings and queens, not just in the UK, but into outer national. Yes, indeed, kings and queens. We're going to have an international, powerful Pan-African Black power representation of group economics on gotkushTV this coming Saturday. Yes, indeed, you do not want to miss it. And then the following day, kings and queens, the following day, stay tuned for the trailer. The following day, you are going to witness the How to Boost Your Immune System in the COVID-19 Area event. Get your tickets now on gotkushtv.com/events. Once again, gotkushtv.co.uk/events. Yes, indeed, kings and queens, gotkushtv.co.uk/events. And last but by no means least, do check out Monday evening, 7 p.m. if you are in the UK, 2 p.m. EST. And you can judge the rest of your timings from there. What's that? 6 p.m. if you are in Ghana. And I believe that's like 8 p.m. if you are in France and Ethiopia. Yes, indeed, kings and queens, 7 p.m. GMT on Monday, we will be dropping the first episode of Decipher, the home of gotkushTV, controversial conscious conversation. Do come through for that, kings and queens. Check out gotkushtv.com. Yes, indeed, kings and queens, check out gotkushTV.com. Sign up to our mailing list. If you are not subscribed to gotkushTV, subscribe to gotkushTV. Like the video as you come through. Also, kings and queens, make sure you like the video. Raise the profile of the video all over the YouTube space. And always remember, you ain't got nothing if you ain't got kush. Why are Black people 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with COVID-19? Is a vaccine the solution? Is it possible to strengthen your immunity to this virus through natural means? Are we really in the midst of a pandemic? All this and more addressed as gotkushTV presents How to Boost Your Immune System in the COVID-19 Era. For this exclusive live web event, gotkushTV have brought together an illustrious lineup of holistic health practitioners, including Stephen Sali of the Mariandina Foundation, Ikong of Eat to Live, Not to Die, Kensu Imote of the Naturally Holistic Wellness Group, and Leah Salmon, the Naturally You Coach, taking place Sunday, the 25th of June, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. GMT, broadcast live on gotkushTV. Tickets are half price until the 15th of June. Get your tickets now from gotkushtv.com. How to boost your immune system in the COVID-19 era. This is an event not to be missed.
This is Decipher, and these are lovely panelists. African versus Caribbean versus British.
African, is that man not?
Everyone's Africanness comes innately. I went to Jamaica earlier this year, and I know I'm not Jamaican. They don't look at me as Jamaican.
I don't like people just wearing a dashiki and wearing stuff and just saying, yeah, I'm African now. That's very fake to me.
You protect people, want to claim Africa, like it's some superior, something. This being a swim circle, and you, the audience, completing the circle.
gotkushTV. After a stellar 2019, your #1 Black conscious media platform is getting ready to go into overdrive for 2020. As we promised last year, we launched The Inside. We premiered the pilot for the Black Group Economic Show. We dropped 2 new seasons of Wordsmith, the #1 platform for artists with a message in the music. We've seen you out on the road, the Black Carpet Awards, the Reparations March, the Legacy Center of Excellence, and more. We brought you Dr. Mumbi, the legendary Bob Andy, Queen Diambi, Kemi Seba, Esther Stanford Hossein, Leo Mohammed, Brother Leader Badlaka, and more. And now, 2020 is set to see gotkushTV taking it to the next level. First up, look out for the official launch of the gotkushTV website, your official portal for all things GKTV, including new shows, news, views, and reviews, soon to be serving you with advertising opportunities and the launch of the GKTV African market. gotkushtv.com will also be a global hub for all things Black, conscious, and empowering from all over the Black world. Black achievements, Black excellence, education, health, positive Black imagery, entrepreneurs, Black brands, and charity work. All this and more can be found here at gotkushtv.com. Then there's the new shows. Decipher, the dynamic discussion and debate show. Health is Wealth, practical tips for living in wellness. Kush Communiversity, home of Black Warrior Scholarship. And UK Fire Entertainment, bringing you a slew of music videos for your listening and viewing pleasure. Look out for more of The Insight, Wordsmith, and the full 3rd season of the Black Group Economic Show, all coming your way soon. As always, the GKTV film team is available for hire to cover your events and all filming needs. Visit us at gotkushtv.com for hire inquiries and more information. Stand by all Black businesses through our website, social media, and show content. We have monumental advertising, sponsorship, and network opportunities catering specially for you. gotkushTV is about to take off. To join us for the ride, there's 4 things you can do. 1, subscribe to our channel. Hit that bell to make sure you don't miss a release. Join us on all social media and hit up gotkushtv.com to subscribe to our mailing list for exclusive opportunities in the near future. 2, like. Let us know you're feeling our content by hitting that ever so important button of approval. 3, comment. We want to hear your feedback on everything we're putting out, so make sure your presence is felt in the comment section. 4, share. Spread the word by hitting that share button and exposing your circle to the magnificence that is gotkushTV. We look forward to building with you throughout 2020 and servicing you with high quality Black media production. gotkushTV. Beyond discussion, beyond debate, we put the power in Black media.